Good evening, Björn. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting this invitation.
Thank you for having me.
Before we start, if you allow me, I will have a short introduction and then we can start our conversation.
I'm here.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. All those friends who have joined us. Well, it was obvious that we have to do our conversation in English, not in Farsi. We will also have listeners and viewers from other countries. And although Björn knows a bit Farsi, but not that much to hold on for a 1-hour conversation, I think. To make it brief, I won't introduce Björn actually, because I assume that a big number of the viewers who have joined our conversation may know Björn from before, especially those Iranian music fans who had a musical relation with Björn in the past 10, 12 years. Björn performed in Iran with a good number of the lineups that he's collaborating with. He played 2 times with Anouar Brahem's quartets in different formats in Tehran. He played with Bazar Blå, his Swedish trip folk band, his trio in Tehran. He played solo at the Show of Hands Festival. And and with perhaps one of those very highly appreciated formats in Tehran, the trio with Klaus Gesing and Samuel Röhrer, which an album called Amira was also published, also in Iran. So I think it's not necessary actually to introduce you. Instead, I want to make another introduction, which may be relevant to our discussion. Björn is coming from Sweden. He mostly lives in Switzerland, in Bern, but now he's stuck in Munich, I think, for 7 weeks.
Yes.
So the quarantine period is mostly now in Munich. As a Swedish musician, I just want to make a very short briefing about the music scene in Sweden, because I think it will also relate to our conversation. The music industry in Sweden is a very important topic in the music scene, although the country has only 10 million inhabitants, but it's the 3rd ranked actually country when it comes to the music industry and export. I mean, after the United States and the United Kingdom, Sweden is the 3rd high ranked music industry, let's say, core worldwide. And perhaps for many, it started with the band ABBA. But throughout these decades, maybe we just faced the front of the whole Swedish music scene, like ABBA, like Roxette, like Ace of Base, or many others. But behind the curtain, the industry will fail without Sweden. I just give you some very short statistics. In average, almost 25% of all the #1 hit charts in the pop music scene have a relation with Sweden. Either the songwriters are coming from Sweden or the lyric writers are coming from Sweden. Many of the very famous musicians in the pop scene, which we know, I mean, from Britney Spears, from Madonna, from the band like Maroon 5, like Katy Perry, Pink, Lady Gaga, Jennifer Lopez. I mean, it's endless, the number of musicians who have a Swedish back, either as a advisor, as a songwriter, or as a lyric writer. And despite that, also the music industry in other spectrums is very much related to Sweden. We all know the 2 words which are starting with an S, the SoundCloud and the Spotify. Yeah. Both are originated from Sweden. So even if it comes to the new stream of the music industry, Sweden is again one of the let's say the pioneers in this spectrum. So having people like Björn in the music scene, it's not unusual for the Swedish folk. But we are very blessed to have you actually, and very much blessed to be able to maintain this relation for over a decade. So that was the introduction. The rest, I think the people who have less information about Björn could easily make a short Google and find his career. He's one of the known ECM artists as well, not to mention. So let's go to our talks. Thank you, Björn, for your patience for that introduction.
Well, thanks.
You want to greet the audience? I'm all ears.
Yeah, no, I mean it's funny to think about the Swedish importance in the music scene, because in Sweden, as in many countries, the music scene has been looked upon politically and lobby-wise as something a little bit alternative on the side and not so important. But at some point, some years ago, we actually realized that it's not only in the world a big player, but it's also inside the Swedish export industry market. Next to Volvo and Saab or other industrial companies, the music industry as a whole is a very big number.
How come? What is your impression? How did it end up like this?
Maybe, I mean, there are many different reasons, I guess. But to make it really short, I think ABBA is a very important thing to remember. They showed that even from a small country with a strange language, you could make worldwide hits and worldwide careers. You could make tours that usually people thought it was only possible in the UK at that time or from the United States. So they opened a lot of doors, I'm sure. And that also started the whole production and the songwriting and the interest for not only playing as a musician or as a singer, but also the craft of being a songwriter or a producer.
Can it have a relation with that? I read somewhere that almost all Swedes can speak English.
That's an important thing. I mean, because our language was at that time when ABBA was around, we were 7 million people, and 7 million people spoke Swedish in the world, and maybe a few million more Norwegian and Danish people and Finnish people could understand it. So of course we need to speak other languages. And so then, I mean, from the very beginning of when you start school or from, you always hear English, or you hear all the films are in original language, for example, with the subtitles. So you hear the language, and of course, I mean, that makes it easier for singers and performers to cross the borders. And
I also read somewhere that Sweden is the most traveled nation worldwide, even more than the Chinese, if you compare to the percentage of the, population.
Yeah, I could imagine. I have no statistics about this, but I mean, traveling has been a big thing since
the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings started the trend, didn't they? I mean, they even came to the Caspian, I think. So yeah, I mean, but again, I think another thing that actually also has to do with the music scene are the winters, or the climate probably, because we have long dark winters, and people have not much to do except maybe writing music, playing a musical instrument or something like that. So a lot of fantastic musicians actually come from the northern part of Sweden, where it's really nothing happening in the winter except sports a few hours in the daytime, and so you can really focus on something. And many focus on playing musical instruments, and there are incredible players and musicians that originated from the northern parts, which is very few people living there, but at some point they end up in Stockholm and become part of a fantastic music scene. And I think that also made the Swedish into a traveling community. But you need.
So, you addressed to something which I actually wish that you pointed out, which you did. Now, It's been almost 3 months that we are in another state of winter, not from the light and from the coldness, but I mean, we are in a similar dark period where we have nothing to do but some other things that we never thought about it. So we are in a kind of self-quarantine, either forced by the governments or by instinct perhaps sometimes. But now we are locked down in our homes, in our places. And do you think that could have an impact on music positively?
Of course. I mean, we have to be positive anyway in these times. So, yeah, I think there's good and bad things with everything. I think when the first rumors came out that we were going to have a lockdown and you would have to stay at home and self-quarantine and all this, I think many people thought, oh, finally I can practice, or I can get down to focusing on things that have had lying around that I just came about to. I didn't have time to practice. I didn't have time to check out this. I didn't have time to write this tune. Because in normal day, in normal life, you have so many things to deal with. So I know a few people that I've talked to, and many had the same idea that, oh, finally I will have time to do things. Because at the beginning of those rumors, it was like, you thought maybe 1-2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks at the most. But now it's been, like you say, 3 months. And I've talked to a lot of people, and it turned out different. I mean, maybe you started out fully motivated. I'm going to go through all these books I wanted to read. I go through all these ideas I have. And once you realize that it's going to go on for a longer time, and the everyday life became quite complicated for some, here it's still kind of easy. You can just go out and buy groceries or stay at home and cook at home. So it didn't become so complicated. But I do think that the focus on the ability to focus, or the chance, the time out, let's say, to focus on things that had been lying around, old ideas that you never really had time to develop, those things, I think it's definitely a chance these times now that you don't have so many other options. You don't have to travel. You're not allowed to travel. You're not allowed to play concerts. You're not allowed to even rehearse with bands. So you're sort of thrown back to yourself. And that's, yeah, it's similar to the situation in winter.
Well, being positive is quite good, but it shouldn't exclude you for being realistic. It's been almost 3 months, well, with maybe a kind of, small time difference in some countries, a bit sooner or later, but in average, almost 3 months, many activities has been stopped because of the pandemic. Yeah. Like you mentioned, concerts have been canceled, festivals got shut down, and it seems that we will face this at least for a couple of months more. Yeah.
I was saying that, it has a positive side, everything. Positive
That's
side
true.
and negative side. And the negative side is not so difficult to see. And I think the thing that you thought in the beginning, this is a positive thing. If you have the economical situation that you're not totally in chaos from the first day, that you can actually survive this breach of income, then many people had this positive idea that, oh, I can finally do things that I didn't have time to before. But at the same time, I think we have all realized how important it is to have a physical meeting with people. It's one thing to sit alone at home thinking about ideas, but if you have absolutely no contact with fellow musicians, I'm only talking about the musical part now. If you're only thrown back to yourself, and maybe online contact with other people, but not the real interaction, you realize quite fast how important this interaction is. That this social distancing or physical distancing is actually, it's difficult to be as creative and as focused as you would be under normal circumstances.
Actually, that was the point that I was about to ask you, because what I mentioned, I was about to skip the economic impact, because I think the economic impact is it's universal. It's not just concerning music. So all peoples in all sectors are, I mean, getting hit by it. But the thing is that in the early days, you may have seen more musical actions remotely. People playing together remotely, jamming in the balcony. But I mean, as you mentioned, perhaps because many thought that that could be a short-term thing, about 1 or 2 or 3 weeks. But I mean, playing in the terrace is nothing that you can do for 4 months. And you won't get inspired on the terrace as well if you have no connection. So I want to ask about your observations about two, for my opinion, important issues. One thing is that this lockdown, this distancing, is getting, perhaps making you disconnected with your inspiration sources. This is one angle. The other angle is that you need to share your creation with others, which you are now, because of the, I mean, the cancellation of concerts or festivals, or I mean, let's say live events in general. This part is also getting missed. What did you observe? Because you had a concert very, very close to the lockdown in Sweden with Bazar Blå. Yeah. I think the news were already spread there and the people were a bit concerned. Yeah. How was your experience with the people in the hall that day?
They were, I mean, it was a fantastic thing because everybody knew that this might be the last concert for a long time. So it was very appreciative and very, a very positive thing. But at the same time, I mean, after the concert, normally you meet people and you talk and maybe try to interact somehow. And you noticed already then that this normal interaction was very difficult. So it was a little bit a tense way of interaction after the concert, but during the concert it was a very warm feeling actually. So it was very sad to have we had to cancel one concert on that tour. Yeah, since then it's a lockdown. So I was fortunate to be playing almost until the very final moments of live possibilities. But it's not only the contact with an audience to get the inspiration. I think also the interaction with fellow musicians, like a rehearsal. I mean, you can't rehearse. I mean, it's different in different different areas in Switzerland or in Europe or so, but generally it's not allowed to meet if you don't have to really have to. So a rehearsal with a band is something that's it's not really okay. So that's also a very important source of inspiration and also a way of testing ideas and all that. That is also missing at the moment. But the missing of live interaction, I think, beside the economical impact, I think it makes everybody realize how incredibly important this is as a social event, as a creator, and also, but also as an audience. I mean, I miss both parts. I miss as a performer performing in front of an audience, but also as an audience to listen to a live concert, listening to live streams or listening to online things is one thing, and it helps a little bit, but it's not the same thing.
Absolutely. I think you could be also a good case to clarify your impression about this issue that you also mentioned, because you were involved in the past couple of months on and off to make some remote jam sessions. Recently also you did one with our Iranian fellow musician Hessam Inanlu with his kamanche yesterday, and 2 days before actually. Of course, I mean, it's a very nice thing to do, just to show that you're alive, that you have still the pace in your hand. But do you really think that if this would continue for a couple of months more, that could give some or add something to the music scene?
Of course it adds something. I mean, I'm very happy to have had this chance to finally, after all these years that we know each other, to finally actually create something together with Hesam. I mean, that would not have happened, I think, if this situation would not have been. I think the inspiration or the idea to, oh, who do I want to collaborate with? Normally you think about, in my history as a musician, normally you think about, oh, I would love to play with this and that person. And then the second question, already before you think about music or anything artistic, the second or a very early question is, how can we finance this? How can we finance the travel to go to meet somewhere? How can we organize the practical aspects? Now all of this is gone. Now it's just sending files back and forth and doing that. So that is one thing that's made it actually easier and more direct to collaborate over borders and with whoever. I mean, it doesn't have to be the same time zone. It doesn't have to be, you send something off and someone reacts and then it comes back and then, so that actually makes things possible that would not be possible otherwise. But the music that comes out of it, I think that the interaction, the direct interaction, if you're actually in the same room at the same time, together developing something is a different thing. So this kind of what do you say, stafette, that you start something somewhere, you send it on to the next, he adds something, he sends it on to the next. It can be a way of using these times creatively, and I'm sure a lot of fantastic things will come out of it. And I'm very happy about what we did together with Hesam and me now, for example, and other collaborations I've seen in the same way. Bands that are playing multiple things on different parts, from different parts of the world, and it sounds really nice, and there are really artistically interesting things happening, but it needs a lot of effort. I mean, to make something that has an artistic value, even under these circumstances, even if it doesn't have this physical interaction between two or three or a band or musicians, artists working together to create something in an organic way. I mean, if you have this sort of non-organic, I mean, you can't say that sending files to each other and all that is not organic. It's one way of coping with the situation. It's a work around, let's say, of a creative process. And it's very interesting, but at the time being, I see a lot of things that would benefit actually from a little bit more production, let's say. I mean, if you compare to a live concert with a band or listening to the CD of the same band, it's a little bit the same thing. If the CD is just something you put out you have to have something to sell. The live experience is going to be so much more interesting, and people are going to be disappointed listening to the CD. But if you put as much effort into producing an album, which is actually an album, it has a dramaturgic thing. It's not only one track after another. You pay attention to the sound, to the recording, to the production value of the whole package. Then it becomes something that has a value of its own. And I think that's a very important thing to remember in these times, that it's so easy to send a little idea to the next guy and he adds a little bit, and so, but that you lose the
interaction,
thoroughness. That actually, if you miss the physical interaction in the rehearsal space or being together in the same place in the studio, if you miss that, you have to be all the more exact when you come to producing what you want to get out. Yeah. So,
are you a person who's watching, for instance, who would buy a DVD of a band's concert and watch it at home alone?
I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I've seen a lot of online, not online, but a lot of recorded concerts. And the things that stick to my mind are maybe out of 50, there are 3. And the thing that I know that made these 3 concerts something very special is not only that I like the music. It's not about liking. I can be very fascinated by a live performance, by a DVD of a live performance, because of many other things. Like you see the interaction of the band, you see the production of the whole DVD. I mean, it has to sound great, it has to look great, it has to be nice camera angles, it has to be. It's not just front picture of a theater or something like that. It doesn't work for me, at least. And
so therefore, I mean, we also have to be, I mean, a bit, let's say, worried about the couple of months that we have ahead of us, because it seems that we are going to suffer from that. I mean, of course, we will have a post-quarantine period, but that will be much sooner than the post-corona period.
Yeah.
That may last another year or a couple of months more. So we have to realize, okay, we are going out finally, but we have to acknowledge that the corona is just right behind us. Yeah. So it seems that even if many businesses are going to reopen by force or by need, the culture scene won't be on the top wish list. We hear from here and there that at least till the end of summer, there's no sign that any festival is going to, I mean, launch, or any concert venue is going to reopen their, I mean, gigs there. So this is a near future that we all have to, I mean, live with that. Of course, it will also have an economic impact. We are all jobless now, to be honest. No matter how much saving you have, how many months you can live with your savings, but fact is that you are jobless now. Some, they can only live for a week more without earning money, some maybe a couple of months, but that doesn't make any difference. All 2 of them are jobless now. And it's not just about us, or you especially, or I mean, you as an example of the musicians who we face on the stage. There's a big team behind the music scene, which many people never think about. And normally we consider that the stars, either in the cinema industry or the music industry, the good earning ones. But there are numerous people who are working who either are not that superstar, or they don't earn that much money like the superstars, like the technicians, like the sound engineer, those who are taking care about the stage, those who are in the backstage, those who are, I mean, the staff members who are coordinating to, I mean, to fill the hall, the ticket sale offices, and many people who are directly or indirectly involved, and they are all jobless. Compared to the musicians, we still can give the musicians a small chance that maybe in the couple of months that we have ahead, they perhaps could find a chance for themselves to survive, either by making remote concerts, by, I mean, getting some donations, I mean, to attract their fans. Okay, you know, guys, we are at home now. We try to make music for you, so please help us. But that sound engineer, that guy who's doing the lighting, they have no chance. I'm sure that you have quite, I mean, very close, I mean, encounters with those people who are involved in the back of the curtain of the music industry. What was your observation about them?
There are different things. So if we start with the ones that are very important and very dear to me personally, like the crew, sound engineer, light engineer, stage managers, whatever, who are actually making it possible to present live concerts normally. I mean, I think they are suffering quite much more than many other parts of the music industry, because they were forgotten. I can only speak for Sweden and Switzerland and Germany to some point at the moment, but I'm sure it's similar in other countries as well. Probably not in Iran, but in Sweden, from early on, since, like I said, the music industry is actually regarded as an industry that it's part of the export industry, a big income source for Sweden as a country. So from the very early days of this situation, it was clear that we had to do something for the culture scene. And what happened was that the musicians are quite well organized also in Sweden, with some kind of union, some kind of organization. And so they started collecting how many gigs were cancelled, how much loss did you have, and all that. And that was transferred to the politicians. But many sound engineers, they are self-employed. They have a company with 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 people employed, and they have their own. Everything is sort of small in a way, and they don't have a lobby organization. They don't have any big union, and they are not sort of connected in that sense, and they were forgotten. So there's this huge fund or quite big funding for the artists and the performers in opera to theater to whatever, but the crew behind the scenes have been a little bit forgotten. So what the music scene is trying to do is to sort of put some of the money that were promised to the music scene, to put some of that in another funding for the people that we need. If this ever, when it starts working again, we're going to need these people. And if all of them are bankrupt and out of work, and everybody had to sell their equipment and all that, there's no way that we're going to be able to start. So that's a sad thing. But the people are starting to acknowledge this problem, and I think there is still hope for some solutions that will happen. And what I also see is that the promoters, I mean, people who have venues or who are programming concerts, they are also quite well organized. So and there is also an acknowledgement from political side that we need these people. You can't just take away the funding from these things and say that, oh, okay, you're gone. And when this thing is happening, when we can start doing concerts again, you have to restart. So they are still being kept alive. Most of the funding have been, the official funding has been allowed, even though they don't, normally the funding is connected to so many concerts per year, and obviously we cannot fulfill that at the moment, but the funding is still being paid. So 2 out of 3 have been kept alive, let's say. And the third party, the crew and the people that you don't see, we are trying to make it possible to keep them alive as well.
Do you have any? I mean, do you, as one out of the hundreds of musicians, do you have any kind of strategy about that? For instance, in Iran, we don't have such kind of organizations who will support the music or the musicians. We have the House of Music here, but I mean, they're more into trying to lobbying with the government, like you also mentioned. But this is normally a very bureaucratic routine, which you may not know when it will end up to a result. No. But fortunately, there are some maybe cultural manners that we face here in the Iranian society, like some charity actions, some social responsibility-based actions that people collect, try to help each other, raise funds, even collect goods if they don't are able to collect money, but to help people who especially are freelancers and now becoming fully jobless, to help them out, at least to survive for a couple of months more and then wait and see where we are going to end up. Despite the lobbying that these organizations or these, institutes are making with the government, are the musicians who are still able to earn money, like making remote concerts, or being able to be the front of a kind of, let's say, fund collecting thing, because audiences normally know the musicians. So if a musician is coming out now online and says, okay, you know, we are staying at home, I'm the X band, and please, dear fans, help us.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that a good portion of the fans or supporters may donate money, like crowdfunding. Have you seen or have you encountered such kind of incidences that the musicians are becoming the, let's say, the model of collecting, let's say, sources of money or help, and then spread it between those people we never, met before and are,
yeah,
in your industry?
Yeah, there are some. Obviously, I have no big contact with a big network of people. Like normally, I have, you know, my atelier, and I meet people, and you have everyday contact with people. So I don't know how much, but I know that there are. About the funding and the generating income at the moment, we have to see different things also. There is, as an artist or as a producer, you have another source of income, which is streams or the Spotify or Apple Music and CD sales also, even though it's a very small portion. But this is also a source of income that we have, that sound engineers seldom have. And that is one thing. I think I haven't seen the next thing from Spotify to see how these first couple of months, if there was an increase of streaming.
There was a decrease. I will tell you then later. After
okay. Anyway, but I could imagine that on certain platforms, the online income has been, people are searching for new ways. There are certain ways of making there's something called Patreon. I don't know if you heard about that. It's like you as a musician can make up a Patreon account and people can sort of support you directly on this platform. You as a musician, you can supply some exclusive material on this platform and people pay to your Patreon account, and that's sort of one way. But it's also this thing about live streaming or live performances online that I think it's so new. It's been around for a long time, but the models of generating income from that is still a very young one. So many people are trying out different things, and I don't think I've seen different models. And I think the models that have worked best until now is there's a venue in Munich called Unterfahrt. It's the jazz club of Munich, and they have started something where the jazz club invites bands with enough distance between the musicians on stage. They produce the live stream, they pay a little fee for the musicians, and they stream the concert, and people can donate directly to the band during this. So all of the incomes of this live stream comes directly to the band, and the band can do whatever they want with it. If they share it with the sound engineers, if they share it with their friends, I don't know exactly, but at least 100% of what I as an audience pay goes to the musicians, which is, I think, a very fair model. There are other models where you stream on a platform, and as an audience, you pay a monthly fee to see all the things on this platform, which is kind of strange for me, in a way, because I checked out another website where there's a lot of concerts recorded over the years, and I saw them, and there were two that I really would like to see out of 100, let's say. That makes it easy to count. And if I want to see them, I would have to pay a subscription. The small subscription is 1 week, $7 or $10, let's say. But out of these $10, I want to pay to see these two concerts. But these $10, they land in a big pot, and they are distributed between the 100 videos that are available and the one who has over the time most streams, they get the most. And that's not the one that I wanted to see. So I would prefer, well, I'm hoping that there will be more and more models of financing that you can actually support the artist that you want to support, and not sort of put money in a pot and it only comes to the ones who have the most views anyway. And I think we have to think about different models and try to find different ways of financing these kind of things. But to return to the question, I see actually a lot of sympathy and solidarity between musicians generating fund and donating to fund more networks of musicians or more networks of people working in the arts.
Thank you, Björn. I want to mention three different topics. One is, two is more addressed to the audience, so you may know, but I just want to mention again that when we are talking about streaming or digital downloading, or the new platforms to exchange music between the source and the listeners, statistics show that less than 25% of the whole turnover is going into the pockets of the musician, and 75% in general is going to pockets of others who are either directly or indirectly involved with the music, but not the creators themselves, which is of course a very sad fact. And despite that, many musicians, since that new era began with the digital era, CD sales and then later on LP sales dropped rapidly, drastically. And so many musicians preferred, instead of getting royalty from their companies, in return to receive CDs and LPs instead of that limited amount of money, because they had gigs, they had concerts, and they could sell their CDs and LPs directly to their fans, or to the music fans who came to their concerts. So even CD sales were not important anymore for them, which was sold in the record shops, but mostly during the concert times or the festival times, which now this small chance is also, not dimmed, but fully, shut down. And another fact, which Björn, that could be also interesting for you, even the digital platform has decreased by, selling or streaming music in the past 2.5 months. I made a very small research a couple of weeks ago about that. And in average, 15% of the music streaming income dropped in the pandemic period, in the quarantine period, which if you analyze, is also quite logical, because a big portion or share of music streaming you use outdoors, either in the subway, when you're going to work. For many employees, you are able to put your headphones on and do your work and listen to music. And all these chances are now gone, and you are stuck in your home. In the beginning, many people felt, okay, that could be a chance to increase streaming. But when you're locked down with 2 or 3 other family members in one place, you cannot consume everything by yourself. The other one wants to cook, the other one wants to watch films or whatever. And music needs a minimum loudness if you don't want to hear it with your headphones. So you are going to disturb the other people who are living with you. So it seems that because of all of these reasons, even digital stream has been dropped in the past 2 months. So that, let's say, predictable income is also not taking place.
Yeah. Well, but I see something when you mentioned merchandise. Merchandise, CDs selling live at live concerts and so, which is an important. You're right. It's an important source of income, or a booster of the tour economy. Let's say, but there are things that are coming up, like Bandcamp is another site where you can actually still sell merchandise, almost like in the old days. And I think there are fans. There was Bandcamp made a thing a few weeks ago where they they said that they will not take any share of the sales on this particular day, this one Friday. There's another one coming up now on the 1st of May, where they also say that we let everything go to the artist. We don't take any of our share. They normally take a cut of a few percent, which is okay, but on these days they didn't take anything. And on that Friday, there was $4.5 million going through Bandcamp. Worldwide, of course, which is not super much, but it's still quite a lot if you think about it. I mean, fans were really getting in there, and because all the money went to the artist or to the people actually owning the work, and that sort of shows that there is an interest. There are people who are interested in actually supporting the artist by buying their intellectual property. Let's say, I mean, buying their albums, buying their, I don't know, T-shirts even, or something like that. Which is, of course, nowadays, also in these days, a little bit difficult because shipping is quite difficult to organize. But on Bandcamp, you also do, you have digital albums and all that. And you can also, this thing that you can actually pay as much as you want. Mm-hmm. You can pay $10 or more, for example. Exactly. And that shows me still that there is an interest, even if you don't meet live, there is an interest in actually connecting with a certain band or with your artist, with the bands that you, and still consume their music. But the closer you get to paying them directly, I think that the closer you feel connected, and the more interested you are in actually paying these. Even if it's just $5 or something for a few tracks, it's much more sympathetic to many people, and to me also, than to pay $20 for a subscription for something where I can have 50 billion songs for 1 month. But I would rather pay the $20 directly to one artist that I actually want to listen to.
Please listen to that final sentence to what Björn mentioned. This is very important, that if we are going to spend money in music, that we also can make sure that that money is going to the right point, or is at least landing at the right spot. Thank you, Björn, for that. It was very important to mention that. But now we are
There's one thing that I forgot to mention, which I don't have so much experience with. It's this crowdfunding you mentioned also, because it's sort of intertwined, this kind of things that you could donate during live concerts, live streams, and so it sort of goes into the crowdfunding idea that you have you do a project. You put it, you present it, and people can support it somehow. But I think crowdfunding is meant to be something else. Crowdfunding is actually not meant to support something that you did, because a live concert is already happening. Crowdfunding, I think it's important to remember that that's actually something that you could use if you have a new idea. To make that idea happening, and to finance everything you need to make this new idea happening. And I think that is very important to remember, that we don't sort of start mixing, crowdfund me for what I'm doing already. No, save that or my idea at least. I would like to save that for when I have a bright idea, when I have something that really needs funding for this specific thing. That's where crowdfunding comes in to me. There has to be other models of financing or actually donating to show your support of what I'm doing at the moment, which is playing a concert, donate during the concert, and that money would be as a thank you, or as a instead of buying a ticket to a concert or so. But let's not use crowdfunding for that.
True.
In my opinion. So.
And how are your days going on? What are you doing normally as a musician, landlocked, locked down? What are you doing? I mean, tell me about your daily life.
I was lucky because I came from a tour with Bazar Blå. So when I came here to my lockdown position, I had my instrument with me. I had a little bit of my electronics that I would use for recording and for doing things. I had so yeah, I practice. I try to learn new things, which has become sort of diving into technical matters, of course, also because for a long time I had the idea I wanted to make a live video of my solo project, sort of live demo, let's say, video, because I realized during my last few years of playing this live concert that many people hear the album and they think that it's a lot of overdubs and a lot of this and that, and it's impossible to do it live. So for a long time I wanted to produce a video together with my really professional video friends that I know, and to make a really professional thing. So I found myself here, and there was this festival in Switzerland where I should have had a concert, and they said, we cannot do the festival, but we will promote any live or either a live stream or a live video if you want to do it instead of the concert. So I borrowed some equipment and tried to make a live video, and that was a learning process, quite a heavy learning curve, sort of from formats and this and that. But yeah, I mean, trying to stay creative, reading up on different things, and trying to also stay connected with the professional friends, to not forget all about the projects that we had started, and writing music, practicing a lot.
Having people like you on a live chat, of course, is enlightening in many aspects that we learn from each other, of course, especially from our guests like you. But for me, it's also another reason that other fellow musicians follow these conversations and then convince themselves that they are not alone. Because even when you're locked down in your home and you're in the quarantine, it may obviously happen that after a couple of weeks or months, you feel depressed, you feel left alone, you feel that you're the only one who's suffering, and I'm the helpless guy and the world has forgotten me.
I have to say one thing also. I had quite a breakdown a few weeks ago, because
voila. So people
I had this feeling of like you mentioned, this feeling alone, I'm the only one suffering and all that. And I had this feeling that I'm not motivated. I'm practicing, I'm doing my, luckily I have a lot of music that I like to practice every day. But for once I felt everybody else are so creative. There was, every time you check Facebook or check Instagram, there was new videos from this, there was new content produced by this and that, and everyone was everywhere and had so many ideas and produced so much, and I was just practicing. I wasn't producing nothing. I mean, in one sense, all of a sudden my brain told me that, oh, you're not doing anything. You're not producing, you're not projecting, there's nothing going out. And that hit me. I wasn't prepared at all. I felt good. I felt really strong, and I was happy to be practicing, and I had some new ideas and all that. But all of a sudden I got totally stressed that everybody...
How did you manage to get over it?
Well, I started looking at what was produced, and I realized that, I mean, and I started connecting to a lot of these people that I knew that were producing. I asked, how can you how does this, from where does this come? And also I realized that much of what was being put out was sort of a cry for help, in a way. People all of a sudden had tours cancelled. So from one day to another, you went from being someone who was in contact with an audience and had these moments of happiness with an audience to being locked down at home. And so much of what was produced was just sort of cries for help, in a way, like I still exist, maybe telling the world that I'm still existing, and every like was sort of a little bit of an acknowledgement from an audience that sort of made you a little bit happier, maybe, that you're not totally forgotten. But I realized that actually there is a big risk in all of this. A lot of the content that is produced and is being produced at this moment would benefit from a few months of waiting, or actually making it a fully grown project or a fully grown product or something like that. And the risk that we are running at the moment is that the audience, how do you say, that the audience get used to. This may sound a little bit arrogant, but it's not meant like that. But to sloppy produced things that you do because of you're so stressed out that you're not able to communicate with the audience, but you have to communicate in some ways. So you put something out that is actually it's not up to your normal standards. It's not, if you would produce a concert like that, everybody would say it sounds bad, it looks bad, but you accept it because it's consumed through your iPhone, and it's a sort of momentary thing. But I think that also helped me to get over it. I realized that I'm not able to produce like that. I still think that we owe it to our audience to produce things that are really well produced, as well as possible, and has some sort of contact, some kind of dramaturgy. And I realized that it needs time. I needed time. And at some point I said to myself that I cannot be part of this sort of daily, momentary, put everything out that you're doing. And that made me a little bit calmer. And then
between the lines of, Björn's, let's say, conclusion, there was something lying in between the lines which I want to mention on behalf of you, or perhaps I'm going to take the liberty to take advantage of your words and say it from my own opinion. Folks, take it easy. Don't feel obliged or responsible that you have to be productive every day, that you have to do something every day. Take it easier. Let the whole environment inspire you. If you get inspired, do something. But really, it's not necessary that just to show that we are alive, we put a burden on ourselves to do something. We can live in these periods much easier. I'm very sorry, Björn. Time flies so soon. We only have 2 minutes left. I hope that the whole pandemic period will, go off so quickly. I just tell our dear, viewers that this video will stay on Hermes Records Instagram page for another 24 hours. So those who couldn't join us can watch it later on. We have 25 seconds remaining. So I thank you very much, Björn, and the final word from you.
Well, I think, there is going to be a time after this. Let's make sure that we still have something to say after that. So, save up a few ideas for what's coming.